Moo and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pink Tron. I'm Steve Pritchard, and with me tonight, Sean Fogenberg, Craig Martin, Steph Etienne, and John Keenan. Let's start as we normally do and find out what everybody's drinking. Let's go to you first, Steph. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking this time not Fanta lemon, but some regular Fanta orange.
Oh dear, like it's. How does Fanta Lemon feel about you cheating on Fanta Orange like
It's my
that?
second choice, but I still have Fanta lemon in the fridge, but thought to mix it up. But
Yeah.
at least it's
Speaking
not. At least it's not the radioactive orange you get in the States. Where
of.
you have the
Well, you've got Bobby Kennedy coming to sort that out. There'll be nothing putting anything now in the US. Speaking of not mixing things up, John Keenan, what mushroom-based beverage are you on tonight?
I'm mixing it up, not mushroom based, but certainly electronic colors. This is picked up at my local Japanese grocery store, the Wajimaya, called Shonen Banana Cream Soda. I think this is going to be truly horrible, but we shall try it in the interest of science.
That I'm waiting for John to have a sip now.
It's strange. It's banana. There's like a
Not
weird
as bad
vanilla.
as not as bad as you thought based on the
Could have
face.
been. There's no mushrooms, and you can tell. Yeah, I'm
Craig
not gonna.
Martin, you had to dash out of the door to either get a second
Like a
beverage or a third
muppet.
beverage.
Yeah, so I had to get the first beverage because I had neglected to get one in our chatting. So I got a Tickle Fight IPA from Half Cut Brewing.
Nice, Sean. What do you want?
I will be racing race two, so going non-alcoholic. Made myself a limeade with some limes and some of the calamansi from the backyard again. So nice little uh, sweet and sour.
Oh, nice. I thought I'd been hoping you'd be on it like a tequila mix, but if you're racing race two, it's
Yeah,
not.
it would have been with tequila in it otherwise.
Oh dear. And I've gone for a Chilean Merlot from the co-op on the way home.
Oh.
Well, sadly, um, Sean's not on a tequila, and we'll be racing in race two. Um, so we won't be crying any tears over Sean's tequila. But speaking of salty things, it's Seaside Sprint, I believe, this week for Herd Winter Racing. Do we know how many laps of Seaside Sprint? Presume it is a laps-based one.
It says four laps, 28.1 kilometers.
Ooh,
Excellent.
four
One of my
is
favorite routes, actually, this one.
yeah.
Do like Seaside Sprint, particularly for Bullseye, actually, funny enough. So this is the one we go out through the S's, through the volcano, back again, repeat.
And it's
So
got what I think a lot of us think is the best finish in the game. Like
Where is
it's
that?
that
Yeah.
the,
descent
the
finish to the sprint on the bridge.
yeah.
So you do the big descent down off of the S's, not big descent, the 5 to 10 second descent to get up to speed, and then it's about holding power and holding speed um, across that sprint.
I genuinely think it's a sprint which opens up for non-sprinters because you can really hammer that little
Yeah,
climb
yeah,
beforehand,
that kicker.
get ahead of people, and then double sprint. So if you've got a bit of a longer sprint with less power, or you've got a bit of you're a lighter rider, I think it gives you a chance to gap those guys and maybe do a double sprint at that point. Again, more so in the bullseye where you can do sort of more attacks, so it tends to be like that. But that point and the climb up into the volcano could work for the lighter folks in the race, I think.
Well, and there is a long option here too, with the 1 minute or 60 to 90 second attack coming from the beginning of the S's.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I noticed that in actually one of our ladder races that sort of one of their team went quite hard. As you come out of the sort of glass tunnels bit and turn right towards the S's, there's a bit of a climb there, and they made an attack and they made it really hard through the S's.
Yeah. I
So, yeah,
I won one from there. The video was highlighted on Zwift Insider.
Nice. True panache.
Yeah.
Is
So it
it
does look like in race one,
and
there
it's
was a group of about 20 that came to the finish together. So
Yeah. That's
not an
normal.
especially selective course, uh, but that group did end up spread out over about 7 seconds by the line. So that last kicker and
yeah,
sprint really does kind of smear the group across the road.
But I'd say it's selective, but it's different in how it's selective because you're every time you go up that climb into the volcano and into the finish, you're going to lose a couple people if people hit it hard. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that climb into the volcano is an interesting one, isn't it? I've found that actually, if I try and not tail gun, but stay in the pack and stay in the draft there, that's where it goes wrong because you can get in a gap. I found I just need to go up that climb. I tend to try and hit it at about 80-90% every time. And then if I'm in front of people, I can slow down. But there's been times where I've kind of tried to go slower than that and then had to work really hard through the volcano, and that makes it quite a big effort. Whereas actually, if you time it right in the volcano, it's two quite sort of short, punchy efforts, and not much else, isn't it? Bike choice, it's got to be aero, hasn't it? I mean, there are some climbing bits, but they're not really long enough, I'd have said, to justify anything too lightweight. But maybe the Tron.
Nothing later than Tron, I don't think.
I will probably be on the Pinarello with a disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my new go-to actually, because I
mm,
quite like the knowing when you're in the draft avatar move. I find
Wow,
that
so
really.
you've finally moved away from just riding a Pinktron all the time.
I mean, I now ride a Pinarello with disc brakes with disc grips all the time. Um, it was interesting actually. So I didn't complete Tour Britannia. We maybe talk about that a bit later, but that was you could only change the wheels, so I kind of got used to having to change things before rides. Mostly use the same wheels the whole time on that though. So yeah, John, Sean, you're doing race two.
Fingers
Looking forward
crossed.
to it.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Glad.
Right.
I don't think I've ever raced this. How have I gotten this far and never raced Seaside Sprint? It seems odd.
Yeah, it doesn't get used a ton. I think that it
Yeah.
has been like it's not a great like HSRL course. It's a good bullseye course.
Yeah.
you
Um,
see, you see it in ladder also a couple of times because of
Okay.
the circuitness and
I mean, it's
It's
nice
one
because
of
you
those
can get the
courses that
right size, right? You can do 2, 3, 4, 5 laps depending on
mm.
how long you want to race. So,
yeah,
yeah,
It's
it'll
one of
be
those courses you'll know every bit of the course really, really well.
yeah,
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
uh, so right, that takes us on to herd beginner racing, which is Innsbruck Ring this week. Again, no laps listed on the
yeah.
sheet
But it's
I'm on.
2 laps for the bottom 2 bands and 3 laps for the top 3 bands.
if your
But there are
ZRS score is below 170, you get 2 laps.
yeah,
Nice. An Innsbruck Ring, for those who don't know, features the infamous leg snapper. It's about a 70 to 80-second climb, probably. In these categories, maybe a bit quicker. 60 to 80 seconds is probably fair to describe it that way. Um, yeah, any advice on the leg snapper other than it's just going to hurt?
it's always I think the advice is always you have to go a little longer than you think you have to the top.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
go over
I
the
would
top. And then
also
some
say,
people will try to push it on the toe snapper just to get a little bit of a
yeah,
gap too,
Yeah.
if that's a possibility. But
I would also say it's one of those ones that I wouldn't sell out everything, burn all my chips to be 5 meters ahead of somebody because it's very catchable on
Mhm.
that descent. If you can get your sprint up over the top to get the super tuck and then punch again on the toe snap, a little kicker on the way down, you can actually get back to people. So it is I think it's really important to be in a group at the top of that climb
Yes.
rather than on your own.
Yeah, so the it is not worth selling out to be 5 meters ahead of someone. It is very worth selling out to not be 5 meters behind a group.
Yeah.
Like that can get out of hand really quickly if you, especially if you're one of the lighter riders in the race and can't get back in the draft, and the group just rolls away from you.
Bike choice on this one's an interesting one. Again, I think it is a slightly more climbery bike. It is probably one where I think the Tron's really valuable if you've got it. Craig's disagreeing. I just think you want that you want to go up the leg snapper as fast as you can.
If you're a 1 minute leg snapper or less, like, or even close to that,
But
you're go, you're still
you're probably
you're
not
still
in these
going you're
categories.
still going so fast
Yeah.
up the leg snapper. I don't think it's worth it. And it's worth going as hard as you can on the leg snapper every time you go up, basically, or at least staying with the front group if they're not going as hard as you can.
I feel
I
like if
think the
they're only doing
reality
it twice, like people aren't going to like totally kick it the first time thinking it's all going to be about the second one, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think so.
No,
I think well it depends actually because this is I mean
these are
it's new
beginner
racers rather
racers.
than
Yeah,
kind of slow racers, I'd say necessarily. So if you if you have two or three of you that know what you're doing, it could be worth going all out
on that
on the
first
back
one.
snap for the first time to get a mini group away and distance some people.
Right.
Uh,
I've just realized I was like, oh wait, I think that my Zwift racing score has gone down a little bit after some of the races I've done recently. I wonder whether, and I think I'm just at the top of the top category. If I was like,
There you
I
go.
could I could race a herd beginner race for the first time.
Excellent.
so
I
yeah,
don't think I'm there.
I think you're still looking pretty aero, but maybe you're on the wheels. You go not disc wheel. I don't know. Right, what
Yeah,
have we got next? That brings us to Stampede. Says
Climber's
because I can't
Gambit.
find the Climbers Gambit. Sorry, I can't find my tabs.
Yeah, this
What we got this week on Climbers Gambit stuff.
for week 3 of our All Corners of Watopia, we're going all the way to the south. Luckily for people not the great, but I've chosen Mayan mountainsides, about a 2 kilometer, 3% climb for most people. VO2 max effort 3 to 6 minutes if I see the Strava times. And you have it's on the Mayan San Remo route, so you have a 10-kilometer lead-in warm-up from the jungle pen. So no warm-up before is required.
So there is a Strava segment. This
Yeah,
puzzled me when I saw it, and I went on Zwift Power, and there's not a Zwift Power segment for it that I could find.
Interesting.
Really?
They have the second one, the Itza, but I did not see a Mayan in Watopia. It's in Watopia, right? Am I?
yeah.
Yeah. So Mayan Mountainside.
Oh, you've got it in segments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
It's not in my drop down.
Weird.
I'm gonna look again on a different computer. There it is. All right, never mind. I stand corrected. I thought that was very strange.
I
It
think
would
I'm
be.
alone, and actually, I'd rather this was the grade. Like I feel like until I did Tour Britannia, where every race seemed to be in Yorkshire. Um, every ride I did before that seemed to feature either mine and Itza in some combination, whether it's a TTT or a race or a ladder race or whatever. So I think I'd rather just suffer on the grade because I know that's going to take 20 minutes and then be done.
So
Uh,
Yeah,
what I think this might be TT bike.
yeah.
4.5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes.
yeah, yeah, it's brand, but there probably will be done in ZRL or something. But from looking, the people I'm following, Brand has done a 3.5, 3:35. I see people up to in the 6 minutes. So yeah, but yeah, speeds go from, if you're doing like me, my best is a 4.5 minutes at 26 kilometers per hour. So, and it's 3%. Think there's only one section you get to like 7-8% corner, but for the most part, it's like 4-ish, 5%. So steady. So TT is definitely an option. I have to look at Zwift or bike, what it should suggest for me.
Yeah.
I would say for, decently strong, somewhere in, strong C into B. Not only is it TT bike, I think it's disc wheels.
Yeah.
It's also one I think to build up a little bit early because you come slight from the jungle pens, you'll come slightly downhill into this. So you could whip it up and be going quite fast into the start of the segment.
What
Oh,
I
this is what
remember
I
is
was looking at. Yeah. It's not
from
on
what I
Zwifter
remember.
bike. Yeah, I was looking at the wrong thing. It's not on Zwifter bike, but it is on Zwift Power.
Okay, there goes my option to search which bike to choose. Well, it's probably something like, indeed, like TT bike, or maybe since I'm maybe a middle, what was used a C category, maybe a Pinarello with some disc wheels or a bit more aero wheels. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's probably somewhere. Let me look. How fast did I go on this? So I mean, this was in a pack. I did 3:49 at 4:4. Um, yeah, I think.
I think if
What was your step?
I think if you're able to do about 4 watts a kilo for 4 minutes, you're
Yeah,
probably going to be able to do you're going to make use of the speed of the TT bike.
yeah. I mean, maybe you don't use the CADX because that thing is heavy, but yeah. Other than that,
My PB's 435, and I'm pretty sure I did that on a TT bike. I
okay.
might have not had the disc wheel on, but
Yeah,
Yeah, my fastest is a 4:33, 26 kilometers. About a couple of months ago at 260 watts, which is now 3.45 watts per kilo. But I don't know if I will hit that target. Or see how it goes. Around,
nice.
if you do around, and if you do around 5 minutes, it's somewhere between 23 and 24 kilometers an hour. So maybe not TT, depending on where you
yeah,
are in the old CAD bands.
yeah. No, if you're much below 4 watts a kilogram for 4 minute 4 to 4 minute power, then yeah, you might not want to. You might go something more Tronny.
Cool.
We're gonna we're going to skip over mountain goats because we don't know what it is, as usual. We'll just say it's 2 laps of on top. But speaking of evil climbing things, the Stampede is Radio Rendezvous. Is
Ew.
that what I think it is?
Ew.
No,
Like
no.
12K of.
I think if I remember when he first introduced it, I think it's and set a before you start the grade. So you basically only do Mayan and Itza, and then a downhill finish, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
That looks about
down
looking at Zwift Insider quickly. That looks about right. Yeah, the full route is 20 Ks, so you're definitely not doing the climb up to the radio tower. But oh God, that would have been brutal.
How much is it?
It's 12K, so it
12K.
is at the
12K?
end of the descent.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's net flat.
Although it may even be less than that because this so the
Oh, plus the 3 kilometer lead in.
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you
It's
start at the
probably
jungle
really
pen?
close to
That's
the
net
top of
downhill.
Itzicom. Yeah, it's probably right at the top of Itzicom or thereabouts.
yeah.
Hmm.
Might be a little before, actually.
Yeah, I was about to say that from the top to Itza to the bottom, it's not true. That's a kilometer and a half max, I would say. So it's somewhere on Itza, then in somewhere in the climb, because the climb is about 4 kilometers. So
3.8, apparently.
yeah,
This is
so it's
definitely aero TT bike then for me. The most aero setup you've got. A lot of flat. Okay, doing Mayan, and you're
Yeah,
doing the
the
flatter
flatter
but
part of
as
Itza.
well.
yeah.
And if we were just talking about doing my mountainside as a TT bike, then that's the hardest climbing part of the route. So
Yep.
Yeah,
And it's important to remember we never repeat ourselves on this podcast as well. So
that's true. And it's important to remember we never repeat ourselves on this podcast as well.
I'm glad you hit the ball out of the park there, Sean. It teed up for you nicely. Right, what have we got left? Bullseye, Craig. What's happening in Bullseye this week?
We are on 4 laps of Champs-Élysées.
Nice.
Yeah.
With two
it's
sprints
only
per
lap.
lap, or
1 sprint per lap.
okay.
It's
Just
only
the
lap.
finish. So this is where, yeah, we're going to go back to 1 sprint per lap for the most part on Bullseye because, well, I like it that way.
This is good. I mean, it opens up two kind of attacks, doesn't it? A kind of traditional banner attack that you go hard to the line, and then you keep going hard up to the Arc de Triomphe to drop people, and then the attack out of the tunnel. Like there's two solid points, and then sprint for the line from the group.
I think it's mostly sprint for the line. I've never seen a tunnel attack actually work.
I think everyone knows it's coming now, don't they?
Yeah.
I think it depends. Like, I have had it work against me where I have been at my limit and somebody pushed real hard there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it can work, but if it can work, you were probably able
Yeah.
to pull away at any point during the race if you really wanted to.
Yep.
So I should know this, but what are the power-ups in?
Default power-ups.
Just
So-
default. So well, that means you won't get a ghost. Because that would seems like it would be
No, you won't get a
the
ghost.
least
It's,
the least useful.
Truck, helmet, feather.
Okay.
So for that, for the ghost, you just disconnect from the internet for a few seconds and then
That doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I guess back in the history of Zwift, that was a cheat for a while.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Where would it drop you back in though? Would it just
it drops you back in wherever you are. So if you
because
drop out the power or drop out internet, disconnect internet,
it still does the
hammer it.
calculations.
Yep.
Okay.
you lose draft because
Yeah.
you don't know where like
But
your
if you were
computer
going to
no longer
attack
knows where
anyway,
everyone else is. Yeah.
Right.
but if you were going to attack anyway, go for it.
Okay.
Uh,
Nice. Slippiest arrow, got to be on this one, hasn't it?
100%.
Might give that a go actually this week. Although that might end up being day three of racing, having just done 9 days of racing and nearly broken down. I might try to avoid doing 3 days in a row.
Don't do
Um,
that, Steve.
I think that is all of the events in Herd, isn't it? That takes us back to, is there anything special coming up on Herd Winter
Ooh,
Racing next
there
week?
is. It's Yorkshire double loops.
Is that a big, that's the new longer route, right? I don't think
It's
I've
the
done that yet.
new. It's a so I look. Merline described it to me, but I don't actually. I haven't actually looked at it yet.
I think
Four of
it's
two at Wells.
wasn't it the reverse of Royal Pump Room, a variation on that, but I think it finishes on top of the KOM, the reverse
It
one. But
does.
Okay, so right in space. So Yorkshire's basically a figure of eight. It's a bit of a lopsided figure of eight, and Tour of
Mhm.
Two at Well did. If you think about like the bottom of that figure of eight, you just did that loop in both directions. What this loop does is you do the top bit as well, which takes in the Yorkshire Sprint reverse. So this is now all of the roads in Yorkshire in both directions, which you couldn't do before.
And finishes at the top of the KOM reverse, which
Yes.
Yeah,
is
what a
an
what
interesting
a route.
finish.
What
Yeah.
a route.
This is
Uh,
so if this week was very unselective in terms of like making sure that there's not a big group at the finish,
There
next
won't.
week will be the opposite.
Yeah, there won't be a big group at the finish.
well, you have pullback wall within like 5 kilometers from the start, so
Yeah.
it's basically a reverse variation of Royal Pump Room 8, kind of.
Sorta. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorta,
sort of.
but
A
sorta
bit of a
not.
mix, but
Yeah.
not completely, but it's
yeah, because Raw Pump Remote doesn't reverse, so this is why it's the yeah,
Okay.
basically all roads in Yorkshire both ways,
No, so
which
your Royal Pump Roommate is all
all
roads both
yeah.
ways. Um, this one is a little different.
Yeah, yeah. Royal Pump Room 8, you start first with that
So
estate loop,
they start with the
and
town
then you
loop.
do the
Yeah.
forward direction up until you go down the KOM, do the estate loop, and then do reverse. And it's kind of this in reverse, but the loops around the estate are much later, and you finish on top of the Yorkshire
Yeah.
KOM reverse.
Mm.
But yeah,
I think that's the big difference, isn't it? It's the finish point. It's this
Oh,
yeah,
top
100%.
of the
That's a
top.
Yeah,
huge.
yeah,
and
Yeah.
it's the last whatever 5K you do both. You do the KOM forward, do the loop at the top, and then come back and do the KOM reverse. So it's
Yeah. So that super crazy middle of Royal Pump Room 8 that I love is
yeah,
the end,
yeah.
is the finish. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and it was this week, I think, so yesterday or a couple of days, the World Series, they tackled this route, the elite race, I think, yesterday. Cool.
Oh, I look forward to that. That'll be a good one to do. I might have recovered from my Yorkshire trauma by then and want to ride in Yorkshire again.
Yeah, so before we get to news and around the horn stuff, I did want to just check in and see, Steve, how was your very bad decision to race continuously for too long?
I did say all credit to Brent, who managed to do
21
uh,
days in, or,
Chasing Yellow, which is
yeah,
21 days. So for people who didn't know, I was doing the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour Britannia, which was 10 days, consecutive days of racing, no rest days, a prologue and two ITTs and 8 stages. And People, folks on the herd doing it. It was hard. Like it was, there were, yeah, I think just some days were um, not fun. A lot of the stages were, some of the stages were quite long. The Queen stage I did a lot on my own. Um, and I think what I kind of said to one of my friends actually, I think the difference you notice is like it's like when you join a gym, right? They say you should always join a gym with a buddy because the days you don't want to go to the gym, your buddy might want to go to the gym and it kind of makes you go. And I think I didn't quite have that. There wasn't quite the camaraderie on Discord. It wasn't like the people just jumping on and we were panting at each other. And I think that's what I needed. And it got to day 10, which was a Sunday, and I'm like, oh, I'll do the 12 o'clock ride. And I just couldn't be bothered. Like, I just didn't like day 6 or 7, I didn't want to go to the shed and ride Zwift. I was bored of Zwift.
Mm.
Um, and I'll do the 5 o'clock ride. Well, I'll do the half 7. I sat down and said to my wife, I just don't want to. Like, I'm not going to enjoy it. Like a few of them, I didn't want to, and then I did, and I enjoyed doing it. And I think on that Sunday, like, I'd got to the point where I'm like, I'm just not going to enjoy this. I'm knackered. But actually, more than anything else, just mentally fatigued. And I think that's the build up of that. Obviously, doing work and things like that as well, and then you do the riding, and that mental fatigue of like, I just don't want to go and sit on my ass for an hour and a half on the bike where I won't talk to anyone, where like I've got to prep all the stuff, like like things start to hurt as well. Like so credit to folks who do this like day after day after day. Like uh I don't think I got the rest right, like in terms of the amount of sleep I was getting, and I don't think I got the post-ride recovery right. So I was cooling down on the bike quite regularly, at least sort of 10, 15 minutes, doing a bit of stretching. But I think I'd like it's the point where I don't know, I'm in my 40s and I needed to be getting like ice packs on my knees and things like that afterwards. Or like one day I had a bath. Like I think if you're going to do this sort of thing, you need to allow yourself probably a good 30, 45 minutes to do some stretching, get some peas out the fridge and put them on something that hurts to hydrate, and then also not be trying to do a million other things and getting 6 hours sleep or whatever it is. So,
Getting a massage from your soigneur every day.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, but this is the thing that struck me actually is that you read a lot of these pro riders books who talk about going through, and the one that stuck with me, I think it's in Mark Cavendish, one of his books, where he talks about learning from George Hincapie the art of doing as little as possible in the day. So he's like George is always sat down, so he's not even walking around, like he's not walking upstairs, he's getting the lift and things like that. So he is really like, I mean, okay, they're doing 6 hours, it's a lot harder, but I think kind of there is that element. If you're going to try and do one of these things, like make sure you've got a bit of that time to rest, to eat, to have a bath, to have a soak if you need it, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's like good fun and credit to the folks who did like all 10 days of it. There were some people doing double days as well, where they sort of missed a day, and because of time zones, were getting up really early to do a stage, to then do a stage late in the evening as well. So yeah, some crazy folks out there.
I think that to the point about resting as much as possible, I think that one of my favorite quotes about that is never stand when you could sit, never sit when you can lie down. Like it's just the approach to life that you have to be able to consistently flog yourself day after day is very different than I think people assume. Oh, well, they're a really active. Now their life their job is really active thing. They must be really active people. It's like no, they're just trying to lie down as much as possible.
With the exception of Peter Sagan, who comes back from a trading ride and goes mountain biking.
I think it's the first time I've done 9 days trying to race. So I
Yeah.
raced all of the stages. I think the first time trial I did, I can't remember which order the time trials came in now. The first time, longer time trial, I took a bit easier and took more as a kind of like tempo ride. The second time trial, it was interesting because you guys were talking about Glasgow crit last week on the pod, and that one basically there's a lumpy bit and a flat bit, and I did the lumpy bit as hard as I could, and then did the flat bit slower because I thought that was the fastest way to do it, expending the least energy. Um, but yeah, 9 days of like the effort that you put in to race on Zwift is quite tough. And a lot of them were kind of like getting close to an hour, if not longer, which is like it's quite a long effort.
Were you finding you were also eating a lot more, or that just sort of happened because,
Eating too much isn't a problem, John. I think
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I was probably burning enough calories for how much I like to eat. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
um,
and
but
referencing that eating was doing a ride outside, listening to Lantern Rouge is now doing like a masterclass and listen today to the second episode about nutrition and was quite an interesting listen. Quite a few interesting points with expert nutrition who now he worked for Bora Hansgrohe and now going to tutor, but thinking about how many calories you can take, but also taking like if you have a hard or long training rides, people using that last hour to not fuel or just to fuel to get to the end. But he was talking about using that extra hour to already fuel much ahead to the next day. So it was quite an interesting listen as a just a recreational cyclist that with races from time to time in between, but it was quite interesting listen as a yeah, like I said, an amateur cyclist or whatever.
So
I think
Yeah, I
Steve,
haven't.
sorry, Steve, just when you talk about, the day after day starting to wear down, for me, that really comes back to that first year of the Herd Club Championship.
Mm.
This is when we did, because that one, and I'm looking at James's post, and it was only four. It was London Loop, 3 laps, Ventop,
Oh,
Volcano Climb After Party, and then 8 laps of Queens Highway on
Uh,
Bullseye.
oh, so that was just 4 days in a row, but there was also a couple things
It
the
was four
weekend
days out of
before.
6.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
because there
could
was
potentially do it over 6 days if you did a Friday HSRL,
yeah,
but it was, or yeah, 5 days. Sorry. Five?
something
They're
like
five
that.
days?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday,
Six.
Wednesday, 6 days.
6 days. Yeah, 6 days. Sorry. So 4 races, 6 days, or up to 6 days. But it was still freaking hard. Because trying to get, you basically had to do mountain goats, so Ventop and a TT on Volcano Climb After Party on back-to-back days, and you could do them in either order depending on
Mm.
races you picked.
And those were a 2 hour climb and a 75-minute TT or something like that.
Yeah, with finishing on a climb. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was hard, hard, hard.
Yeah, so I think kind of essentially the tips I'd give people is find a friend to do. If you're doing one of these things, find someone to do it with who's probably going to do it at the same time as you, and you'll jump on Discord. And we've all done this in various events. We jumped on
Yeah.
Discord. We've probably not chatted to each other much, but like every so
The
often
fact that
there's
you're there.
Just
Yeah.
huff and puff at each other.
like, where are you? Oh, I'm on this bit. Oh God, like it's so hard. Like you kind of shared pain is half the pain, isn't it? I think the
Yeah,
other thing is Steph's point of nutrition. I think the biggest thing I learned about exercise was actually how important eating is. And I lost a load of weight by changing diet, and I didn't change my exercise rate. In fact, I exercised less because I used to be playing hockey, and you'd like fairly intense training, so 2 matches a week, 2 or 3 training sessions a week. I started coaching, playing a lot less, so doing far less exercise. I'd do sort of half an hour 5K runs on a Saturday, sometimes a bit quicker. And just by eating, lost 10 kilos. So there's that kind of what you eat. And I didn't really change amounts of food I ate. I just changed what I ate. It was kind of more vegetables, more carbs, more protein, less sugar. It's the kind of, and I think this is the thing with these longer rides is just preparing you'll get off the bike, and I think we're probably all the same. You want a Coke, I want a chocolate bar, like I want something like that. I want a sugary hit because my body's going like, what have you just done?
Mhm.
Like I need gas essentially, and I think what I needed to prepare more of was that I needed to have just a shit ton of fruit in the house. Like if I'd have got the bike and had a load of natural yogurt, a load of fruit and a load of raisins, like that's when I'm prepared, that's my go-to post-ride snack, which is actually gives you that hit, but is a lot kind of slower burn sugar from how I understand it. Whereas, so I ended up in this like you'd ride, you'd have a load of sugar, you'd have like an energy wave, and then you have an energy crash, and kind of that doesn't help. So it's like, and this is what Steph's saying about kind of, and I think the nutritionist guys saying about like you're trying to prepare to actually like have this like slower release of energy that you can then build up the next day as well. So yeah, do some research on that. Have something
Yeah,
to like have some compression socks or some peas in the fridge so you can like if you're like me, there was just some days where my knees were sore. Like it's just
So I'm going to quote a couple of my favorite YouTubers.
Joe
And
Rogan.
no, Sid and Mackie.
and Jake Paul.
And yeah, so Sid and Mackie sell a T-shirt that's "Eating wins races," and yeah, I mean they do really long mountain biking, and it's eating on the
yeah,
bike, but it's yeah, I mean, fueling is really important once you get into anything longer than about half an hour.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
Like I
haven't
said,
paid any attention really to the whole fueling thing since I started Zwifting, and I'm guessing that's because I'm home, so I can, yeah, just shovel in a handful of raisins or whatever
Yeah.
it is when I get off the bike. Whereas before I started Zwifting and I was riding outside, I would bonk not that infrequently. I'd come home from work, right? It's like a 10-mile ride, and I get like 70% of the way there and realize like I gotta go to a store. I have to eat something. Stop halfway, stop in the middle.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that really hasn't happened since
and
Zwift.
I don't know if there's any science behind it, but I definitely used to the day before a race go out and do a this is when I used to run, not
Yeah,
bike. I'd go out and do a easy run, but a good portion of the distance of the race, and then scarf a bunch of food to, in theory,
compensate.
or this is what everybody was talking about. It would dump glycogen or replenish glycogen and get that going. And, I
Mhm.
don't know whether it actually worked or anything, but definitely actually eating something worked.
yeah. It's like I said, it's definitely worth a listen if you're interested in. Yeah, it's a plug, but it was a good episode of look. Either you look on Spotify for Lantern Rouge or on YouTube, please think on nutritional because he mentioned indeed. I think the coach had for amateurs eating the day before or they eat before an event is think what was a good suggestion. But yeah, fueling is key indeed. If you, for instance, if I do these half an hour Zwift rides, I drink something, but I'm used to riding outdoors, doing 3 to 6 hour rides, and then fueling becomes really key. But
I
there's
think that's
also
the thing. I think once you get past the hour mark, so if you, I mean, we've got data on it, which is cool. Like I think most people can expend 400 to 500 calories. That's not that much extra above your kind of normal calorie expenditure, like being alive and walking around, sitting at a desk. And that's probably the most, if you do a really hard Zwift race, you might get over 500 calories in an hour. I think once you get part, and that's where John, like your handful of raisins or something like that, is just something to keep you going. Like I think once you
Yeah,
get to like an hour and a half or 2 hours, that's the point where you definitely need to think about hydration and um, replenishing like salts, I think, on the bike. And you
right.
might want to think about something sugary as well. But yeah, there's some great resources out there. Time of day is an odd one as well. Like I had to do some rides at times where I normally wouldn't like doing rides. I think I've mentioned before, like I used to hate hockey matches that started between 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. because I just couldn't get the pre-eating right. Craig rides fasted, so yeah, kind of work out what works for you. I think is the key there. The best prep I did, like one of the rides I enjoyed the most and felt best for and didn't fuel on. I had a burger and chips at the pub for lunch, and then rode I think at 7:30. So it's probably 6 hours before. But yeah, I had a big lunch. Like it's all digested and gone through by then, and actually felt really good on the bike. So, yeah. Anyway, plugs over. Let's go to the news.
Yeah, I think maybe that
Um,
ended up being our around the horn, huh?
Almost,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I genuinely interested in what everyone does. So if you listen to the podcast, like just hit us up in the comments on Facebook. I think we'd all be interested in what people do and what they struggle with, and something we should talk about more. But right, John, you shared a story. Let's go round the news horn, as it were, about Zwift Insider have been testing bikes, or Zwift and Zwift Insider have been testing bikes in a wind tunnel, haven't they?
Yeah, it sounds like they were a little worried that the upcoming improvements to Zwift that will allow people to augment their bikes indoor wheels, the frames indoor wheels will like make things just wonky. I think we talked about it in the past where, asking the question, does this mean you can take the standard steel Zwift bike and apply your upgrades using, is it drops is our functional currency here? And make it faster than the Tron or lighter than the Tron. And I think Zwift was evidently worried about this in practice. And so they brought in a number of frames and wheel sets and put them in the wind tunnel with no D, which I don't know what the history on that is. But evidently this is a wind tunnel that Specialized uses as part of their research and development, and sort of tested the Buffalo bike and the whatever the Zwift steel bike is based on, and then I don't remember the other frames, but I have to look through the article here, Pinarello and maybe a couple others that are the faster frames and wheel sets in Zwift, and realized that they're probably the span of difference between those frames is not as large as it is in real life. So I think they're going to make help me out here, the slower frame slower. Is that
Yeah, I think
the
that was the fast bikes are the right speed, the slow bikes are too fast, I think was
yeah.
the general.
And honestly, that I think lines up with I think people already know that, I don't know. I seem to get more miles on Zwift than I ever really should.
Yeah.
And I mean that's because there's perfect tarmac, there's always someone to draft off of, there's all of those things, but also the bikes are just too fast. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so like
Yeah.
the TT bikes aren't necessarily because those have the right CDAs and all of that. And when you're going fast, it really is about the aerodynamics and um, but yeah, so some of those slower bikes may actually have been going a bit faster than and those are for most people closer to what we have to ride around on at home, right? Like I'm not on a full aero bike when I'm out just rolling around.
Also,
But
perfect riders and perfect kit as well, isn't it? I think most of us
yeah,
will
Yeah.
not be
I
riding optimally aero and will probably have kit that flaps a bit. So it's
well, and I wondered if the gap is wrong for the frame, and they're putting what somebody is probably the average rider, right? The 70 kilo, whatever height that person is. Like, does that mean that really tall people versus really short people, that those calculations are not the way they should be?
So those calculations are way, way, way off. Um, uh, Even more on how they take weight into account than how they take height into account.
Hmm.
But yeah, that piece of the how fast you go in Zwift is the worst. And
I
it's the further you get from, the 5'9",
yeah.
65 to 70 kilogram guy. The further you get from that, the worse it gets for how close you are. Because my kids go way faster on Zwift than they do in real life.
Your kids are
Yep.
probably as fast as I am because I'm a sail on Zwift.
Well, so not
I
anymore.
mean, the
So actually, not
downhills,
anymore because
right?
my older kid is actually now adult human sized.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they were small, they couldn't really keep up in real life, but they were pretty fast when they were 33 kilograms on Zwift.
I
You
mean,
reminds me of. Go
my
ahead, John.
early Zwifting experience just did not jive with the game mechanics because every time we'd go downhill, I'm not light, I'm like 79 kilos. I would just get popped out the back because I guess I'm too tall for their algorithm or something relative to everybody else. And so that was like one of the many things as a new Zwifter. I'm like, I got to work harder on the downhill that I do like going uphill. This doesn't make any sense. Like, what's wrong here?
Yeah, you've reminded me of Marielline complaining when the women's only races sort of took off big style, and she's got I've gone from being kind of a fairly average height person in a Zwift bunch to being a
Mm.
tall person in this women's only bunch,
Oh,
and this is
interesting.
really
Yeah.
bad.
Being the very tallest person,
Yeah.
actually, in many of them.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So what else? Speaking of herd riders and Mariline, another herd rider spotted on Zwift Insider recently, Sean.
Yeah, so actually another of the little penguins. So Carrie Bartlett, who has raced with the Penguins, one of the EMEA teams. I think they've mostly been a B team. Um,
Yep.
so she's actually featured in a Zwift Insider article today. Uh, not a ton to chat about, but just if you're interested and want to hear about what some of the it's kind of our we used to do the Tronversations. It's a Tronversation on Zwift Insider.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah, go check it out. I'm sure Sean. I'll say Sean will put it in the show notes. Sean may remember to put it in the show notes.
Yep.
But yeah, Google Carrie Bartlett. Everyone knows where Swift Insider is. If you can't find it. And finally, we new roads on Zwift. I am distinctly underwhelmed, but I haven't ridden them yet. Steph and John, I believe you have.
No, it's not much. It's apparently it was the old Beta Islands. It's basically that 5 kilometer loop next to the volcano with a climb in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think it's really an homage and a thank you to all the beta testers is my vibe. I watched the GP Llama's sort of review about it, and he was just so over the moon about how great this was and how there's Easter eggs everywhere for all the old timers who've ridden this loop. I think he had ridden the loop 790 sometimes.
Yeah.
So he was really excited to see Banjo Man and the Queen Mary and a number of other things
The
on the
blue
loop.
guys.
The blue riders, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's an homage to like all you people who stuck this out for 10 years. You know, we're bringing this back for you. But I will say I was on a giant group ride, whatever the tour of is it the tour of Watopia we're
Yeah.
on? Yeah, and 300-ish riders. And as we rolled onto the little bridge that went over to Jarvis Island, for everyone who's done it for the first time, at least got the cutscene, which I think is a new innovation in Zwift riding, where we saw the rock formations that had previously been shielding this area from our view as we rode by near the volcano, all simultaneously sort of rumbled down into the sea with appropriate video graphics. And I think it was pretty impactful when you look at the chat. A lot of riders, but the chat just blew up of what's going on. Whoa. And of course, those big group rides, everybody's strung out from over probably a good 10-minute they're seeing their cutscene at quite different times, so it just kept going and kept going and kept going, and I think it was pretty well received.
Nice. I think for me, it's kind of a lot of build up for a kind of moment.
Yeah,
But like there are some people who are kind of really excited about, like you say, it's the OG Zwift route. I do kind of wonder whether like a softer launch on this might have landed a bit better, like a bit of a quicker thing, like, oh, a new thing's coming, oh, it's here, it's this, and everyone be like, oh, cool, that was really nice. Um, Whereas it's had quite a build up and everyone's speculating what's coming out of the ground, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
When you're on a 10-week buildup,
Hmm.
5.
5 kilometers of new roads was a little underwhelming.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's probably how quickly you could build a road in real life, right? So,
Pretty close, yeah.
It does
I
open up the idea, though. I mean, if they can do a cutscene and everybody is still riding and still moving forward and they can still see it, like I think that could add a lot to the game, right? If you're doing a race and you as a race organizer would like a particular cutscene and Zwift has a laundry list of things. I mean, I think we've all been annoyed, right, going up Box Hill and then you zoom out all of a sudden and you can't see the finish line. I wouldn't say put it on the finish line of a race, but maybe somewhere else.
maybe a race finish cutscene.
Yeah.
You cross the line first, and you get a little like race winner.
Oh, yeah. The winner gets the cutscene. Like you get a little podium action.
Yeah,
Shows your Zwift profile picture and
Yeah. Yeah. Or the big
that's so
head,
open to abuse.
the big head version. Get the bobblehead.
So yeah,
I
nice. I
mean,
think we'll feature some of that in some herd racing soon. Steph, I think you've got plans to look. You've already been looking at what things you can do with Climbers Gambit.
yeah, sadly, because like I said, it has a KOM. For now, the only available option, direct route, is the forward direction of Jarvis, which is I would say the least. It's the longer version, but the least steeper version. The reverse one is interesting, but yeah, it has a sprint before, but that shouldn't be the problem. I think with the Zwift power, but it, it's interesting, and I'll also done as a tour of Watopia the Decadash route, which is basically 10 times that circuit, which climb becomes boring, but it's if you race it like an actual race, 50 kilometer race with 10 times of that climb, that can be quite brutal. And it's quite interesting, I think, for something like HSRL, because you have the if you do the reverse version, you have a 200-meter sprint, and then I would say not even a half a kilometer behind the finish line, you start the KOM segment. So if you do like HSRL type with FTS, that would be quite interesting, but we'll see.
Nice. And I'm sure you'll whack it in the bullseye at some point as well, Craig.
Yeah, it sounds like a bullseye route.
it really sounds like a bullseye route, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice one. So we did a kind of mini round the horn, but let's do another mini round the horn. Appropriate with our topic that we have two or a team of round the horns. We were going to have some gripes about team time trial etiquette, weren't we? So I think there's been some grumbling and kicking off on various Swift forums, but I don't follow any of them because I find them depressing. So does anyone know what's happened?
So I think there's a feature request to disable drafting between different teams in team time trial races. So honestly, I'm not sure I even like the idea, let alone really think it's a high priority, because I like seeing especially when you get into ZRL. I like seeing everybody else. I guess you can still see everybody else, but not draft off of them. But honestly, it's part of the skill being able to effectively pass. Um, a lot of times you get into as much or more trouble with the draft as you get benefit from it. And yeah, just do it right, and it's not a problem.
Yeah. I think
So
people forget that the person you need to get to overtake is the fourth place or whatever how many riders you're trying to get past. They are the person that needs to go past the group. And I've seen it and I've been guilty of trying it a few times. So you get up to the back of the group and you say, little kick, everyone. And because you're at the front of the group and you're pulling and you might be a stronger rider, that works fine. You kick through the group, and actually, you've got somebody at the back of the group who's just sat at FTP for a while and is like, I'm just trying to hang on here, or maybe I've just done a turn. They don't have that ability to kick through. And then you end up with two teams merged into each other. In my view, it's not the job of the team that's been caught. Like, just because you've got one rider to catch the team in front of you doesn't mean that that whole team should have to slow down to let your seven riders through. Like,
yeah,
if you get eight riders or you get your last place rider to the team in front of you, at that point, yeah, sure, they should slow down. They should come off the back of the draft. But that, for me, it means like six, seven, eight riders get in front of the six, seven, or eight riders that you've caught. And at that point, those riders go, cool, okay, we'll shut off for 10 seconds. We let the draft build up and then we go again. Um, there's also some stuff with timing, isn't there? We the last TTT we did, Craig, we saw this. Actually, a team caught us up a hill because
yeah,
we were doing sort of tempo up the hill, and then they'd sort of blown up a bit, and they shut down on the descent, and we carried on at the same tempo and caught up to them again. And we're like, "What you like? Come on, guys! Like you've
yeah,
caught us to do an overtake, and then you've blown up, and now kind of they wouldn't then slow down again to let us go in front, which is really
yeah,
what they should have done."
yeah. I mean, really, yeah, that one isn't really covered very much. The repat, the passing back, because oh, they made up however the minute or whatever. Like, yeah, they did, but then they immediately shut off. Um, yeah, that's a bit of a that was a bit of a thing for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, thinking back to all the herd of cheetahs and herd of crows mix-ups that from 4 or 5 years ago. You got to learn how to do it, but I get the frustration for people that have had a bad pass or a team stick on and mess up your pace line and all of those things. But the number of times I've actually had it happen and it's been more than a couple seconds problem, I can probably count on one hand in the last 5 years.
And usually
I
when it becomes a problem, it's, I mean, hard to say this, but I'm gonna say it. It's just as much on your team as it is on their team. Like,
Usually, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that I've seen more 50-50s than anything else. Occasionally, you get people who are just idiots, um,
it it has
and they
happened.
get it, and that's
I'm saying that's probably that 5 things in 5 years is times
whatever
when, yeah. I mean, there's
whatever
been
rules
other
you take.
passes that were a little clumsy and stuff, but
Hmm. And I
they
think there was one proposal I saw where they're like, "Oh, can't we just make it so that the teams can only draft each other?" And you think that's such a that actually feels like a big lift for Zwift to be able to do that. Right, you can have drafting on, but only on for these people that are in your team. So we need a way in game of identifying who is on your team, and we need a way in game of kind of presenting that nicely. So do we force you all over to like one track, and we force all the other riders over to another track? Like I think in an ideal world, you'd make the draft fall off a bit quicker side to side, and you'd say to teams, everyone would have steering, and they'd steer around each other, a bit like real bikes do. Like
yeah.
if you want to go past somebody, you steer past them. So, um, but like I think TTT is big, but it's also quite niche in the same way. Like it's
Oh
this
yeah.
this is such a small part of it. Like actually, I don't think Swift needs to do anything about it.
yeah, there are. I mean, as Craig said, this is like 1,000% below some other things that a lot of
That
us would rather see.
that was
Uh,
Brent.
yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
We'll attribute that properly, but
Yeah. But like, I mean, for me, one of those things is actually about the steering stuff because, like, for and who knows, maybe this is just a smart approach on Zwift's side to get people who don't have steering to just say, I guess I need steering because it is so annoying not being able to draft off of people that steer. Like, why does a non-steering rider not just get into the draft of a steering rider?
So I think that's mostly been fixed now.
Sure hasn't.
No?
No, I
Not
wouldn't
in the
say
short
so.
term. Like you will drift over, but not quickly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or you stay in your own lane.
yeah,
If you get
so
stuck, you
I
still get stuck. Okay.
this is interesting because the draft I don't have source, so I don't know if I'm like less drafty than I would have been. But going off the fact where the avatar sits, right, on my aforementioned, I now ride the Pinarello every time. In the ladder race we did earlier, most of the guys had steering. I still don't have steering because of Bluetooth and Apple TV. And my rider would be in a visibly like 3 or 4 lanes apart from the rider, but would still be sat up as if they were in the draft. So I'm kind of like, that's cool. I'm drafting. I'm
you
not
get
gonna.
draft, but it is quite a bit less.
Yeah.
And I got dropped in ladder race a couple days ago because like I was chasing down a hill. Uh,
Mm.
and it's so frustrating to every time you're behind, they're at the edge of the road, and then you catch or go ahead, and they're immediately on your tail. Like, well, pick one or the other.
Yeah.
But I think that is so to your point about how this would work for TTTs, like, oh, well, just get everyone to steer around. Uh, yes, but there's a lot of us who don't, or in my, like, I don't think that I can get steering in a reasonable way.
Here's
Yeah,
hope.
I've thought about that.
There's sometimes available very cheap used. Somebody was actually going to give one to me. And I said that I'm really looking for one of these. I have to pay you for this.
this is where like it is crying out for someone to make like it's the kind of thing people make on Raspberry Pis, isn't it? Like, but someone to knock
Yes.
out a really cheap ass controller for Zwift that does, I mean, probably has 4 buttons. Um, uh, Power up, steer left, steer right. I think the three
Yeah,
buttons,
I'm thinking of
maybe
just an
5 buttons
old,
if you want to
a,
change up
r-
and down gear. But
I was thinking just a really old joystick with a button on it,
yeah,
right? So that's your power up, and then it's your left and your right. And that's all you can do. Like just bolt that to the stem. But you're right, like Raspberry Pi or some very
But
simple circuit.
yeah, they should have the option because you do have the Zwift plays for your steering and your virtual shifting, but you also have like something like a Zwift Flick, which is also your virtual shifting, and it's just two buttons. They kind of have it in for virtual shifting, anyways.
Right.
So
Have just a bigger click that is steering on your other side and your click on your dominant
yeah,
hand side. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my really low tech solution to the Bluetooth problem at the moment is I don't use the companion app to activate power ups. I use the Apple TV controller tucked into like a sweat guard thing in front of the bike because I just have to hit the play button. That's all I need to be able to do. And the best thing
Oh,
is if I sweat loads on this, because I used to be, even with the sweat protector, you could sweat enough onto it that would activate, like it would get sweaty and you couldn't mash the power up button or it would suddenly try and stop ride and you'd be like, no, no, don't stop ride or like get you into the power screen or something like awful
yeah.
like that. So this, I can sweat all over the remote in that sweat guard as much as I like now. So, but it is, I need one button. Like, and with steering, you'd need 3 buttons. So you think with one Bluetooth, I mean, I know the Zwift bike play controllers have one Bluetooth connection, but separately they're 2 Bluetooth connections. But you think one Bluetooth connection to make a remote that does 4 buttons, um, maybe 5. Like if we wanted to change up and down gear, steer left and right, and activate power ups, that's all people ever want to do in a race, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is this is a decision that has been made because it's not difficult to allow you to map a keyboard key to these things, and then you can like
Mm.
get a little like little keyboard or a a little gaming controller or something, or even put it in the companion app, whatever it is. But this is like, no, we want you to buy Zwift Play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please buy peripherals.
Which I can't believe Zwift is, I mean, they're what, 100? They're 100. Are they still 100, 150? Like,
They're a lot.
are they
$100.
making, yeah, I mean, are they making that much relative to what they're making for their subscription base? I just can't imagine it's anywhere near the same magnitude.
No, I've spent. I don't want to think about how much $2,500 on Swift or something at this point.
Right.
Probably not that much, but
But yeah,
The,
it's
so
140 Canadian dollars
Is it?
at
bringing us back to
WTRL.
TTT etiquette, I think like the steering would be great. It's great to steer on people. It's fantastic. It's actually great to be able to steer to the back of your group to swing out
yeah,
to let the next person. It's really cool for
Mhm.
that. Like that's
Yeah.
one of the best
Mhm.
steering. But I think I would almost wrap up this conversation by saying I see more challenges with in-team TTT etiquette
Yeah.
than I do with teams passing each other TTT etiquette.
Yes.
And I think actually it's one of the things the herd does really, really well. And like maybe just to sort of pass it on a bit. Like I think there were some people in one of the rides. Like there's one of the guys joined the ruse recently. He was like, "Oh, I'm worried I'm going to be too slow. Like I don't like really reticent about doing it." And was like, "Oh, sorry, I've slowed you guys down." And people in the chat being, "No, no, we don't drop people. Like we get to the end as fast as you do. Like, and we have teams that
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that, and we have teams that go fast. And like actually, that's the bit to pay it forward and let people know. Like actually, if I Ben got dropped, he's coming back into riding. I just sat and rode with Ben at the back. I said, right, I'm not doing the TTT with you guys anymore. You guys go off. You're fine. I'm going to ride with Ben until he finishes because I know he's done that for me in the past. And like, it's just kind of that kind of in herd etiquette and getting your TTT right as a team. That's the thing that makes you go faster. Is how you're going to ride, how you're going to ride together, how you're going to enjoy it. Not like if you maybe get caught or passed by somebody that they fluff it up for maybe 30 seconds. It's yeah, I think there are more gains in team etiquette, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
I haven't done TTTs in a while, but every time the TTTs, yeah, the no drop policy or in her teams is a real. I think it's really accessible for everyone, for the for the that wants to join it. Uh, I just have trouble finding it in doing it in my schedule, ladder racing and workouts, but it's a nice way to work as a team and also so like I said, it's accessible. So if you're hesitant about it, just do it. The team will support you and yeah.
the yeah. Uh, there was always the baby checking quokkas. There's always been a few teams in the herd that are a little more competitive, and on a lot of those, everybody knows that going in. They've done a few TTTs before, and yeah, like, no, go ahead, guys, I'm done now. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly
And
that. Well, that one nice note to end on. Everyone ride for the herd. We're all lovely. So without further ado, I'm going to say good night, Steph Etienne. Good night, John Keenan. Good night, Craig Martin. Good night, Sean Vogenberg. Moo, and good night to everyone who's made it this far. Enjoy your riding, whatever it is, over the weekend, and have fun. Hydrate, however you like to do that as well.